everyone. My name is Smith Whitfield, and this is the SIGVE Speaker Series, the February edition. And I want to welcome you, and I want to also, on behalf of my fellow cohorts in this operation, namely Grid Jumper, who is our fearless producer and does a lot of the behind-the-scenes work getting everything ready, and good buddy and Grand Poobah Emeritus Scott Merrick, sitting in front row, stage right. Did I get that one right? So welcome to everyone. We have a really awesome guest here, and it's a guest that I'm really happy about because it's a person that I've had a lot of interaction with. And John Lester, I know, can tell you really kind of a great expanse of his virtual environment work, and it started right here in Second Life and has branched on to all kinds of ventures, and I really want to give him the opportunity to talk about that. But I can tell you John is now with Reaction Grid and doing a lot of Unity Jive work, which I found pretty fascinating. John's just doing some amazing stuff, and I can tell you, just from a personal standpoint, John, and I know Robin is in the audience too, I struggled with Unity and just wrapping my head around it, and there's no better person than John and even Robin, who have just who have been patient and calm and caring, and that's the key word, I think, is caring. They really pull together a side to Reaction Grid and all the work they do with a caring, compassionate heart, and I think that's what we all want as educators. Is to have people like John and Robin on the other side of the internet, helping us work through these issues. And they're just they're magnificent people. They've been doing tons of stuff. So with that, John, first of all, I want to just say thank you, and thank you for being here, and thank you for being really a pioneer in all kinds of virtual environment stuff. And if you could just introduce yourself. I know you probably don't need much of an introduction, but tell us what you've been doing in the past, what you're doing right now, and tell us about Reaction Grid and all the awesome possibilities. Welcome.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. A very kind intro. Yeah, I've been noodling around with virtual worlds probably for about 15 years now. I came to all of this with a background in healthcare. I actually started, I was working at Massachusetts General Hospital in the neurology service, doing some research in neuroscience. I got very interested in how computers, in a very general way, could be used to kind of augment communication, so that they could help people, for example, researchers, how computers and networks could help researchers share data and help them collaborate more effectively on research projects. And also how computers could be an augmenting tool for just people trying to connect with each other. Really the idea, I got really sort of fixated on this idea of increasing the emotional bandwidth between people through different technological means. Of course, the highest emotional bandwidth is in the physical world, where you're next to somebody else, you're meeting with people and places. But I got interested in how computers could be used to approximate and approach that level of interaction without having to be face-to-face. So I actually started working, even before virtual worlds, creating, experimenting with chat rooms and I was doing stuff with bulletin boards before the web really took off, and with dial-up bulletin boards and text-based communication, and I started fooling around with different software. There's a software called The Palace. I don't know if anybody here remembers The Palace, but it was sort of a 2D virtual world environment, and I got fascinated by how the computer could be used to create places, and how these places could be then full of people interacting with each other. And so actually the way I discovered Second Life was I was at a meeting at MIT, and Sherry Turkle was hosting the meeting. They were talking about different technologies, new technologies. And Mitch Caper was there. and Mitch Caper said, I've invested in this company called Linden Lab. You should check it out. It's interesting. And, you know, when somebody of Mitch Caper's caliber says, you should probably, you know, you should check it out, I was like, oh, I'm going to check this thing out. And I was really blown away by, you know, the vision behind the idea of something like Second Life, having a three-dimensional, perceptually immersive space where people could come together and interact with each other, and they could also help co-create the space itself. You know, the space was malleable. It was not a fixed and predefined environment like a game. It was a space where people could come together and create whatever they wanted in the environment. And so I started using Second Life back then, and I'd actually used other virtual world and virtual reality platforms. I don't know if you folks remember back in the it was really kind of in the late 90s, you know, virtual reality with the head, you know, with the goggles and the gloves and all that. I was really experimenting with all kinds of hardware interfaces as well, and I started using Second Life, and I really loved how approachable it was, how you know anybody could jump in and start using it. So I actually started using Second Life with different groups of patients and caregivers, and I was helping to create spaces for, in particular, one group of folks who were dealing with Asperger's syndrome, and I helped them build a space where they could practice their socialization skills, and they could also create environments in Second Life that they felt help relieve, you know, a lot of the anxiety and fear that they had for social interactions in new spaces. And so I started using Second Life for, you know, as part of some research I was doing, and in creating these environments to help support people who really were trying to help each other deal with a specific condition. And then I did that for a few years, and then I got really, you know, I was like, well, I'd really like to be part of the history timeline of virtual worlds. Exactly. I'm old. Gosh, I'm really old, I guess. How'd that happen? And I thought, well, I'd like to be part of helping to create the platform itself. Right. So I switched gears, and I left really, you know, academic healthcare, and I'd been doing a lot of really interesting projects, and I'd done a project at Harvard Medical School where I was creating web-based role-playing environments for medical students at Harvard Medical School, where they could role-play through different cases, because the way medical students are taught, they're taught through the case-based learning.
Back online. Hi, everyone. Spiff again. Sorry for that interruption. Seems like quite a few of us zapped out, but we're back. And we are talking with John Pathfinder Lester. And John, pick up where you left off, and welcome back, and thanks.
Sure, no problem. Well, I was talking about when I was working at Linden Lab. So I was there for 5 years, and it was really I really felt it was a privilege to be working with so many pioneering educators in virtual worlds. That's really, you know, the thing that I loved the most about working at Linden Lab was just meeting all of these different academics and students and teachers and you know, just people who were innovators, people who were pioneers in looking at how an immersive 3D multi-user space, in particular Second Life, could be used to augment education, how it could be used to improve how certain things are taught, and how it could be used in ways, you know, that were exploratory, you know, in really in ways that no one had ever really tried to use virtual worlds before. I just got very it's just wonderful to be exposed to all of that, and to watch all of this unfolding around me, which was wonderful. And I also had the opportunity to start the first remote office at Linden Lab, the East Coast office in Boston. That was a lot of fun. And when I was there, that grew to about 30 or 40 people. So I was there from 2005 to 2010, And what I really loved doing was helping people who were trying to use Second Life as a platform for learning really succeed at their goals. Help them figure out how to create projects that were successful in Second Life. And did that for 5 years. And then in 2010, Linden Lab, like lots of companies, sometimes companies will reprioritize and change their focus. And Linden Lab really, shifted away from a lot of the things that I had come to Linden Lab for, which was, focusing on how the platform could be used as an immersive learning environment and working with academics on how to do all kinds of really interesting projects. So when I left Linden Lab, I also started thinking about where I thought virtual worlds were going to go. Right, I had an opportunity to just sort of sit back and think for a while, really what I wanted to do next. And I realized that I felt there were real opportunities in where virtual worlds still hadn't gone yet. Right, and I saw some trends that I was very interested in, and I'll explain more what I mean by that. So I found, the folks at Reaction Grid were doing some really interesting things with Open Simulator at the time, back in 2010. And Open Simulator, I think, is still a very fascinating platform, a really fascinating, in particular, sort of a researchy type of experimental platform, right? The idea of creating an open source version of something very similar to Second Life, but something that could be much more than Second Life. But at the same time, I was most interested in this platform that Reaction Grid was just starting to develop, which was called Jibe, J-I-B-E. And the Jibe platform used Unity 3D as the environment within which you would create and publish an immersive 3D environment. And I started to realize, so I was like, these folks are doing something really interesting, and I want to be part of that and help the company grow. So I've been at Reaction Grid now since then. I've been there for a little over 2 years now. And one of the trends that had been seeing was that people wanted to have virtual worlds more accessible. And by that, I don't mean just easier to use. I mean embedded in things like web pages. They wanted virtual worlds, people wanted to have virtual worlds that were also able to be deployed easily on mobile devices, in particular tablets. Right? The form factor of a tablet is ideal because it's a nice big screen. Right? It's a little hard to do immersive 3D stuff when your screen is like looking through a keyhole. So I thought in particular tablet stuff was interesting. And by using Unity 3D as a deployment platform for this Jibe environment, you got that. Right? You got the ability to have a 3D environment embedded in a web page. And the big thing in my mind was also not that it wasn't just that you had the virtual world sitting in a web page. It was that you could have the virtual world sitting in a web page along with everything else you could put on the web. It could coexist with things. And by that I mean you could have a frame on a web page within which you would have an embedded virtual world. Then you could have another frame where maybe the virtual world is sending data and changing what's popping up in that other frame. Maybe different web pages are popping up in that other frame. You could also have, the idea of also having a virtual world that could support industry standards so that its database could talk to other databases. So, for example, have a virtual world embedded on the web where the registration database could talk to a school's learning management system database or content management system database, and could talk at the database level. I don't mean doing sort of hacks, where a script sends something here, which is scraped and pulled into something else. I mean talking at the database level, two databases talking to each other in their native language, essentially. And that's what Jibe was, and that's what Jibe is continuing to grow into. It's a platform that is. What got so exciting to me was the fact that it was a platform that started with the whole idea of we want to make something that is integrated with the web, that supports industry standards, meaning mesh modeling and all of that that's just part of what it is. Those are industry standards. and all the programming within the virtual environment is using industry standard languages like C# and JavaScript. And you'd have this communication capability so that the virtual world would be able to talk directly to other databases, and sending data back and forth through web services would be easy. So that's really what got me excited about, and continues to get me really excited, that reaction grid. And one of the interesting trends that I've been seeing with just virtual worlds in general is that, well, first of all, the tools that professional 3D game developers have used are becoming easier for non-professional game developers to use. Because in the industry, the companies that create the tools for game developers, the industry has realized that there is a huge market beyond just professional 3D game developers, and that is indie games, independent indie game developers. The kids in their room trying to put together a game to deploy on the iPhone. The next big hit. There is much more of an interest in the companies who are creating these content and development tools to make them affordable enough and easy to use so that indie game developers can jump in and start doing their thing. Right? So the tools are not costing tens of thousands of dollars. They don't require a whole summer-long course to understand how to use them. They are very approachable. And Unity 3D is really, in my mind, really at the forerunner of those types of tools. It's a piece of software that you can start learning how to use without having any experience in 3D gaming. Yet it's powerful enough so that you can use it to create incredibly complex 3D game experiences. And a big part of what the Jibe platform is all about is putting industry standard tools into your hands and allowing you to use those tools to create your 3D world. So you're not learning how to use the Jibe building kit, right? You're learning how to use Unity. That's the whole point. Jibe is the scaffolding that allows you to easily then take what you've created in Unity 3D and publish it as a multi-user 3D environment with avatars, with text chat, with a registration database on the back end, and with voice. That's what Jibe is. Jibe is a scaffolding and infrastructure. It's the wires and plumbing in the walls of the house that allow the house to be a functional house. And when you go into that house, you just focus on interior decorating, on putting what you want in the rooms, building the interior of the house as you want. So that's what's been getting me really excited is yeah, exactly. And Joey makes a good point how Unity is affecting other software like Unreal 4 has influence from Unity in their update. Unity's really been a pioneering company in terms of creating tools that are affordable enough and easy to use enough so that indie game developers, first-time game developers, the guy with a great idea for a game who just wants to put out a game and get it published on maybe computers and maybe eventually Xbox and iPhone, it allows them to do that, to start off and be successful. And then it's professional enough so that they can actually produce a really high quality video game that could be eventually something that you get on Xbox or something else. And being able to customize everything exactly, Day in the audience, very good point. The power of having a fully customizable environment. So what we've done with the Jibe kit is have it be a scaffolding that's completely customizable. So you don't like, the selection of default avatars that we give in the kit. Okay, you could make them, be aliens if you want. Or you don't like the user interface at all? Well, you could completely change the user interface. So people take our kit and sometimes radically change it and dig into it and really make it their own. And that's really one thing that, when I'm thinking of trends, that there's the trend of people want to have things integrated with the web and mobile devices. They want, there's this trend where people want to see things communicating with other things, on a native level. They want to see their database, this SQL database talking with that SQL database directly. And the other trend with virtual worlds I'm seeing is that one size does not fit all. Right? Your concept of what you want as a virtual world is going to be very different than someone else's. And so we see people taking our kit and creating radically different environments. Oh, I want to make a world where there is no land. It's just you're floating in space, or maybe you're a giant ocean, and everybody's a fish, or maybe a world where the physics are completely different. I'm seeing this trend for much more focused, customized, and in many cases private virtual worlds. So, and that's an interesting. It's interesting because some of that's very opposite to what, for example, what Second Life is. The idea of a contiguous space where everyone shares the same space and shares the same user interface. I think that it's just a trend. We'll see how far it goes, but I think it's something that, a platform like Jibe and using tools like Unity 3D, it really lets people follow, that trend and really create highly customized environments for each other. So, in terms of where things are going, one very interesting thing that I'm very excited about too is because this is something I couldn't do at Linden Lab, is that what Reaction Grid has grown into is that we've actually been growing significantly on the side of being a full production studio. So we are not just creating a platform for building 3D virtual worlds. We are also actually building specific projects for people. We have clients who come to us, and some of them say, we want to use your virtual world platform, and we're going to build all of this stuff in here. And then we have clients coming to us and say, well, we want to build this. We had one client who wanted to create essentially this kind of quest-based medieval learning environment. Very complicated environment involving non-player characters and quests, and you had to go and you could interact with other players, but you had to follow this quest storyline and everything. And they basically said, can you, how much of this could you just build for us? Because we have ideas and we have, art, sample artwork and things like that, but we don't know how to do the modeling, the scripting, the level design, and they also even wanted some help with the instructional design part of things. So building as a project in Jibe and in Unity 3D, and that's very exciting. That was something that Linden Lab has never been part of what Linden Lab did. Linden Lab is purely the platform provider. It's really not Linden Lab's role to be a production studio. And I think, let's see, interesting and well, the one I like to talk about most, because actually, to be honest, unfortunately, the problem with a lot of people doing these really interesting private projects is that they're private, right? They're really not for sharing with the public. But we did a really neat project with Microsoft involving creating a professional development environment where they had employees. They wanted to bring employees through some professional development kind of tutorials and questions and surveys and have them interacting with each other. And we created we created an environment that was a really fun balance between kind of serious and playful. Sweet spot is making something engaging and entertaining enough without it being silly, right? And we created. I was very proud of how our team created a really fun environment for them to explore and interact with each other. And that was a case where we did we were contracted as a production studio to do all of that development work as well. So as a company, as we're growing, we're doing two things. We're continuing to evolve and build out and add new features to the Jibe platform, and we're doing more production studio work. So I'm doing a lot of kind of instructional design and project management on some of these larger projects that we have coming to us. And our clients are typically universities and businesses and some government agencies, including some folks doing stuff with healthcare. So like one thing I can speak about a client is the University of Maryland. That's where I am right now. I am in College Park, Maryland, and there are folks here that are working on a project creating community health environments, basically really support environments for different healthcare organizations, right? And yeah, I was just downtown in D.C. last night eating dinner somewhere. D.C. is a wonderful town, Damien. I love it here. And we spent the whole day going through, teaching a lot of people on their team how to do things in Unity, how to do things in Jibe, how to also teaching them best practices for how to build virtual worlds, because it's not just the technical how to use the software, right? The tools alone will not save you. You know, you are not an artist just because you know how to use a paintbrush. You know, you're an artist when you start to understand what makes a beautiful painting, how to make something that captures people's imagination, right? And so part of the virtual world design assistance and production work that we do as a company, that Reaction Grid does as a company, is not just teach people how to use the tools, but how to create what we know are effective 3D virtual environments for learning and for collaborative work, things like that. It's something completely independent of the technology. It's more of the design. What makes good design for creating a collaborative space in a 3D environment. Moving. Well, I want to stop here because I could just keep rambling, spiff. It's dangerous. It really is. Sure. I don't know. I think a lot of what we see are a lot of companies trying a lot of different tools, right? So there are different tools. There are things like Protosphere, and there are other platforms out there for virtual worlds, for in particular kind of aimed at enterprise. The thing with a lot of them is that they're basically a lot of them are somewhat restrictive in what types of environments you can have. They can say you can have 10 kinds of conference rooms, and here are the colors you can use, and here are the types of chairs, and so forth. And sometimes that's all people need, right? But if anybody here, a lot of you have heard me talk before, my big pet peeve is if you're going to build a virtual world environment for learning, why would you just put virtual desks and virtual chairs and a virtual blackboard in front of people? You're just replicating what you already do in the physical world. Why not make a classroom that is, if you're teaching cell biology, why not make a classroom that is a giant cell? Day asks a good question. What do I see as the most effective ways to use Unity and Jibe in education? And this comes into another trend that I like to think about and I'm very interested in is, the intersection between game design and instructional design. Right? You have people. There are a lot of techniques and proven ways to create really powerful and entertaining and in particular engaging games in 3D environments. And you can look at any number of incredibly successful 3D games, and you can sort of pick out why they are so successful. And by highly successful, I mean things like Skyrim or even if you want to go back a little bit further, things like Half-Life 2, right? Valve Software's amazing things, and games like Portal, Half-Life's Portal, which is Valve's Portal, which is an amazingly popular game too. I think if you want to really focus on how to use tools like Jibe or Unity 3D in general, or any virtual worlds in general in education, look at the popular games, the popular 3D games. Look at what they do right, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do as an educator is you're trying to engage, because that's the first and most important thing you've got to accomplish. No matter what you're trying to teach, the students won't learn anything if they're not engaged in the experience. If they're not pulled in and excited about this environment, they're not going to stick around, or if they do stick around, they'll be half asleep and they won't learn anything. So look at what makes good games. Look at what makes good interactive 3D environments in the gaming sphere of things. And then take those lessons learned and just steal them. Just put them, like T.S. Eliot said, talent imitates, but genius just steals. If you see something that works really well, just do the same thing, adapt it into your own project, make it your own. Let's see. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mobile mobile and tablets, they're really important. At the same time, though, I think we're at a really interesting point in history. You know, people ask me, what's the sort of future technology that you're really excited about? What I get really excited about, and what I want to see Reaction Grid really kind of helping to push. There's the we need to make stuff now that is useful, but at the same time, as a company, we also think about the future and about the sort of researchy, like skating to where the puck's going to be, kind of thing. That's I live in Canada now, so by law I have to use a hockey metaphor at least once an hour, and that's that. And I get very excited about augmented reality and how that intersects with things like Google Glass, right? With the idea of moving away from the telephone as the ubiquitous thing that you're looking at that's presenting you with a simulated collection of data and information, and having that just be something that's superimposed on your field of view when you want to see that, right? The ability with things like Google Glass to see things superimposed, and in some cases, not just augmenting what you're seeing around you, but the intersection that I see with that is being able to have glasses where you look at a wall, and instead of a wall, you suddenly see another half of a room that doesn't exist yet in the physical world, but exists virtually, and maybe even being able to see avatars in that room, or being able to sit at a cafe and you look next to you and you see somebody sitting in the chair. They're not really there; it's an avatar, but you're seeing it through augmented reality glasses, things like Google Glass, and the huge collection of other devices that will spring up inevitably once Google Glass gets out there. So I think that's the big challenge there is, and it was funny because I was having a conversation with someone today about this. The frustrating thing is that cannot happen until the hardware reaches the point where people can wear these glasses and get them, and they're cheap, and they don't make you have a headache, and they're small enough, and the battery power is enough that you can wear them all day, and you have the computing power, right, to generate something that looks almost like you can't tell the difference between is it really there or am I seeing it superimposed on my field of view with the glasses. Kind of like if you think about where we are today with cell phones and mobile phones, that couldn't have existed until phones got small enough to fit in your pocket, and until phones were powerful enough to have computing technology to make them mini computers, essentially. So right now, with terms of where augmented reality is taking off, if you think about with mobile phones, we're kind of at back when mobile phones were still things that were in bags that you had to carry around on your shoulder, or they were installed in cars, right? We're still at the big chunky phase. We do not, people back then when bag phones existed, I remember that time people were like, I'm dreaming of a world where your phone is in your pocket and it's powerful enough so you could put a whole tiny computer screen on it and you can run programs on it. And of course back then people were like, yeah, and there's all this cool stuff we could do, but I got these great ideas for software, but we can't do anything until the phones come out, until we have that platform. Now of course the trick is those people started designing back then. They started, companies like Apple, right? We're already thinking, okay, the iPhone doesn't exist, but we're going to start tooling things up. We're going to start skating to where the puck's going to be. And in Apple's case, they helped drive the hardware, right? They invented the iPhone, right? And so I think where we are today, the trick is to think about all the stuff that's going on right now with virtual worlds as they exist, and think of all the best practices that we're all learning, and how that will be able to be applied once we've got the glasses, once we have the full immersive augmented reality view of the world, and how that intersects with virtual worlds, how we can then take virtual worlds and break them out of the desktop and laptop, and break them out of the telephone and the tablet too, and just put them into the physical world, superimposed and mixed with our physical world experience, right? That's the kind of stuff that gets me really, excited, and it's going to happen. If you look at companies like Google and Microsoft, they're, these glasses. This is not science fiction. This is this is coming, and yeah, are virtual worlds ever going to go mainstream, Scott? They will, I believe, once you have the glasses, right? Once you have the glasses, and you can basically, once your perception of the world around you on a daily basis becomes malleable, so that you can take completely simulated, completely virtual environments and mix them with the physical world around you. That's when they'll take off, I think. Joey, that's a good point too. The Google Glass concept really is the final step in pulling all of this contextually relevant data, which is what we're always pulling up on our phone, right? We're always, the big thing with the phone is pulling up contextually relevant data. Today, I was with a colleague and we're like, okay, where are we going to go for lunch? What do? I take out the phone, I go to Yelp, I click what's near me, right? What's contextually relevant right now? I want to see where is there a restaurant with some decent ratings right where I am. Once we can get rid of the requirement of having to dig into your phone and dig into your pocket and look down at something, and once we have the ability to see that kind of contextually relevant information wherever we happen to be looking in our field of view, that's going to change everything, because then we can keep socially interacting with people. Joey, I love that you brought that up. It's making us socially interact with each other while computing. Think about for a moment how often during the day you see people not looking at the world around them, but looking down at their phone. It fascinates me just thinking about how much time is spent with people just looking at a small screen in their hand. And they're glued to it. Yeah, a lot of, and in their cars too, Roxy. That's a good point. But think about the difference between that and just, if I'm looking around and maybe when I've got Google glasses on and I do some kind of, interface with the glasses, maybe voice, and I say, show me all restaurants within a 10-meter radius rated at least 4 stars, with a preference for Mexican, and then suddenly superimposed on my field of view, there's an arrow floating in front of me. Or maybe I see a little virtual avatar, a little dog, and it's like, follow the dog to the restaurant. That will be really tasty, based on Yelp reviews. So it's that kind of virtual world environment. Maybe I see the dog, it's running along, and then maybe I look to the left and I see a beautiful park. But it's actually an art installation. It's a virtual art installation. And if I take my glasses off, all I see is a brick wall, right? See, that's the kind of thing that I think will break virtual worlds out. That's what I get excited about. Yeah. Well, the good news is because Unity 3D is an industry standard program and platform, the same way you could say, Photoshop is an industry standard for 2D imaging, and Maya and 3D Studio Max are industry standards for 3D mesh modeling. There are tons of resources out there on the web learning how to do things in Unity 3D. My personal preference, my personal favorite is I'll just type his name in chat. Will Goldstone. He's got he's written really fantastic book. If you just go to Amazon and search for Will Goldstone Unity 3D, you'll find. Let me see. I'll pull up Amazon while I'm here, and let's see here. Unity 3D. And he's written a number of different books, but his book is Unity 3 Game Development Essentials. here's the for text chat. Here's a big long ugly URL from Amazon there. That's my favorite book. That's how I learned the basics. I love it because it assumes you know nothing. You know, it assumes you know nothing about programming, nothing about 3D modeling, nothing about Unity, and it walks you through a very basic project. It starts out with the basics, like how do you do terrains in Unity 3D? Okay, let's play with the terrain tool, and you actually, it's not a reference manual. It's, you know, a lot of a lot of books are kind of like encyclopedias, and you can't learn American history by reading an encyclopedia. You know, you want to learn it through sort of a story, you know, ideally. Tell me a story. That's always the trick. And Will Goldstone's book really tells a story, you know, walking you through, you know, your first project, introducing you to how scripts work without assuming you know anything about programming. That said, there are, you know, there are lots of online resources and tutorials for Unity 3D, and there are a lot of people who just know Unity 3D in and out who, you know, there are a lot of forums you can find. If you go to unity3d.com, the Unity 3D's own website, you can find forums there as well. And we actually also have, I had set up a while ago, a Google group for discussions specifically, you know, Jibe and Unity 3D. And that, let me find that here. That link is... And that's the link to the Google group that we've set up for discussions. It's a very quiet list. There's a couple hundred people on it, but all you got to do is just kind of pipe up and ask a question, and people will, you know, suddenly pipe up and start sharing information. It's useful for asking questions. But it is, you know, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but it, like, again, the nice thing about the Unity editor itself is just that it's really designed for people who are, you know, starting out in using a professional level 3D game development environment. And of course, you know, if you use the Jibe platform, you know, if you start out with Unity 3D and you're like, I'm going to make my own virtual world just all on my own with Unity 3D. Well, out of the box, Unity 3D basically, there's nothing in a project. So you would have to design a multi-user networking system that allows you to change avatars. You'd have to design a chat system and a voice system that integrates with it. You'd have to design a registration database. So you can see where I'm getting at with Jibe being, you know, the infrastructure and scaffolding that creates that environment, and then all you need to do is focus on, I want to build a village, I want to build a space station, I want to build, you know, this type of a scene or an environment. You know, out of the box, Unity is a complete blank slate, and if you add Jibe to that, you still have a blank slate, but all of the plumbing is already in the building, right? You already have the multi-user functionality. You already have the way to publish your world and have people registering for your world in a database where you can also track. You know, we have built into the database the ability to track what people do in the world, so it's kind of like Google Analytics for, you know, for 3D virtual worlds. Built into that's what part of Jibe is. But get that book from Will Goldstone and join the, you know, Google group, and you know, just poke around on the web, and you'll find lots of Unity resources. And the last thing I want to mention is somebody said something about, is it expensive to get, you know, JavaScript and C# programmers. Well, the thing is, because those are industry standard languages, your pool of available people on the planet who know how to use those languages is much larger than, say, like trying to find someone who knows how to do, you know, LSL programming in Second Life. So I think, if anything, it would be cheaper, because you'll have, you know, a much wider sea of potential programmers to find.
And I can say from personal experience that Will Goldstone book is definitely a nice hands-on book and guide. So, and you clued me into that one pretty quickly. So, before we do the speed round, I just want to see, John, just quickly, for me as a kind of person who works mostly in K-12, and I know there's a lot of people probably in the audience that's K-12. Have you come across some good projects that people have been doing? I know Day, sitting in the front row, has certainly done some Unity stuff, but any people you've come across yet?
For you mean specifically for K-12 applications?
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head. Um, I'm not sure. I know Robin is. Oh, Plane. Yeah, actually, there we go. Yeah, the Leornian Project. That was an environment where that was the one I was talking about. The quest-based medieval environment, right? Where people are, students are going through a sort of epic storyline, right? Where there's this quest and you have to talk to NPCs and interact with them and so forth. When you're trying to get the attention of the K through 12 folks, you have to do a lot more than just create a sort of general space where people are just dropped into it and you tell them to tell them to explore. They want goals, right? Kids want to be told what the framework is, how to succeed, what do I need to do to win, what do I need to do to accomplish, things. They want structure. That's really the bottom line. To be honest, I think it's no surprise that, an environment like Second Life skews very heavily toward, non-teens. Because I think if you're talking about, K through 12, I think you're talking about demographically a group, a population, a part of the population that is very focused on video games. They love to play games where there's a very clear definition of how to succeed and a structure to it. So, a really successful project that involved K through 12 was this Leornian project, E² project, where you had a space that was, a lot of it felt very much like a game. We designed, a medieval themed environment and then a steampunk themed environment, and they had, this quest that spanned sort of, a storyline, a typical kind of epic storyline, like generations past, and now it's the steampunk era and the quest continues kind of thing. So I think you'll spend a lot of time, if you want to do something really successful in K through 12 in terms of educational 3D virtual worlds, multi-user virtual worlds, you'll have to start, like I said earlier, start thinking like a game designer. What makes a successful game for entertainment in 3D environments, and then take those elements, take the elements that make them successful, and adapt them to a learning experience that you want to create. And it's not easy. I don't know, Day. I don't know. Maybe Robin. I'm kind of afraid to jump out of my browser because the internet here is so dodgy. I'm in a Holiday Inn. It's like dial-up all over again. I don't really want to jump to the web browser, but maybe Robin could, if there's any press releases.
They're actually private worlds, so I can't give out any URLs on those.
Yeah, and I don't think they have a press release out about anything that's the general public could share. Yeah, but again, see, that's the challenge. It's unfortunate there's not more public stuff you can learn from all these different projects because a lot of them are just internal only. No, that's fine. I'm fine. Oh, that's easy. It was Atari 800.
All right, Atari 800. I think that's the first one we've had of that one. What was your first storage device? Floppy disk, cassette tape?
I remember I like blew all of my newspaper delivery money on a floppy drive, you know, the Atari 800 floppy drive, and it was like as big as a tank, and it sounded like a tank too. But I was, you know, I was all like, you know, people around me, my friends were like buying cars, you know, used cars, and I was like, I've got a floppy drive. You know, it's five and a quarter, man. That was
That's
it.
right. um, Social network, Facebook, Google Plus.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I really like Google Plus. I don't know. There's something about Google Plus that I just like. I'm not sure if it's technically why I like it better, or if it's just because of it seems the quality of the conversations. But I'm definitely a Google Plus guy.
Yeah, I am too. It took a while for me to latch onto it, but I love the way you can share things with circles just you know that you want. It's so much easier than
Yeah,
Facebook.
it took a while for me too. Initially, I was like, and then it just kind of I started to really love it.
Okay. Angry Birds, Words with Friends, World of Warcraft, or Medal of Honor. What kind of gamer are you?
Well, I don't play World of Warcraft anymore, but that's the kind of game I'm more into. I'm really not a casual games person. I really love the you know, the MMOs and the things like that.
Okay.
Or the Lord of the Rings
iOS.
online. That
Oh.
was like my thing.
Oh, yeah. iOS or Android?
I would say Android because I'm really kind of a Google person. I was using Gmail way back when it first came out, and that was just the beginning of my brain being eaten by Google.
um, PC or Mac?
Definitely PC. I like PCs better.
All right. And with that, we'll wrap up the speed round. Again, I want to thank you, John, and thanks everyone for putting up with our kind of technical difficulties, shall we say. I will post this video on YouTube hopefully by tomorrow. So if you want to catch some of the conversation. And great talk, John, and thanks again.
Oh, my pleasure. And if anybody ever wants to connect with me, I'll just paste this really quick. The best way to find all the different ways to connect with me is about.me/Pathfinder. And of course, if you want to learn more about Jibe and what we're doing, reactiongrid.com. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
All right. And for Scott Merrick, Grid Jumper, and myself, Smith Whitfield, have a good night, everyone. Thank you.